Hey everybody, how's it going? Good afternoon. It's Tom. This Facebook Live was kind of inspired by a comment that was shared with me from Debbie Champion, who's actually part of our group here for Busy Contemplative. So, very grateful for her to have shared and given me permission to share what she had said. So, she's somebody that I've worked with in this Centering for Wisdom process. And what she said after we did our work together, she said, at a time when I was most overwhelmed with life, I happened upon Tom Bushlack and he introduced me to the Centering for Wisdom program. She talks about how my program helped me to slow down, to focus, to center my thoughts on a place of openness. And then she adds, Centering for Wisdom is the perfect guide for someone who is looking to accept or manage the chaos of life. And I really, actually, her whole feedback and testimonial that she provided kind of brought tears to my eyes because it was exactly the kind of transformation that I started doing this work for and wanting to share with people. But also that comment about being that this process is the perfect guide for someone looking to accept or manage the chaos of life. And it got me thinking about how, I don't know about you guys, but I sometimes feel like I go through these different kind of back and forth between a sense of chaos and a sense of order, a sense of putting out a lot of effort and a sense of surrendering and letting go. And it's gone over and over again throughout different periods in my professional life. I mean, sometimes I have these mini movements of that energy within my day, within my week, within my month, and if I look back over years, how that ebbs and flows. So sometimes, see if this resonates with some of you, I'll feel, or maybe you feel really connected to a lot of creative energy. You feel really centered and aligned with your higher purpose in life or why you're doing what you're doing. You're working and kind of engaged, but you're detached from the outcomes, right? You're not like worried about what's going to happen. It's just trusting that everything is working out according to a bigger plan and just as it's meant to be. And then from that space, I've experienced times, and maybe you have too, where you do these inspired actions, creative, innovative actions that kind of move the ball down the field in your business or your organization or the people that you work with or the people that you work for, perhaps. Then, after a while, I have noticed for myself and for others that then my energy can start to shift. Maybe you start to feel like you're pushing and striving, like instead of trusting the outcomes, like trying to force things towards the goals or the outcomes that you want, or getting frustrated that they're not happening yet. And you start to feel more attached to those outcomes, like I have to have those outcomes in order to feel like I'm doing good work, or to even feel like I'm good, like I'm validated. And when that happens, we get tired. You get exhausted, you get frustrated. And some of us probably spend our entire adult lives and careers in that negative feedback loop that just feeds the exhaustion and the burnout and the overwhelm. And the sad thing too is that when we get into that space, like we might start out really inspired with a new project or maybe even a new business idea or a new product launch, whatever it is, you're really inspired, but then you get into that loop, and what happens in that process? You start to lose touch with your center, your creativity, your innate sense of purpose, and even your sense of being guided by something bigger than yourself. And if it gets really bad, maybe you have a health issue come up, and these could be a minor health issue, like just getting like a cold or something because you're wearing your immune system down. But for some of us and some of you, it might be something even bigger. It could be heart issues or a much bigger health issue that kind of brings you down. Or maybe it's something that you've invested a ton of time in, a project or a new idea or a collaboration that just falls apart, maybe for no reason. The other places where I see this show up is sometimes it starts to show up in a relationship that becomes strained. Maybe it's a relationship with a spouse or a partner or a significant other or a child, or maybe an adult kid. But I notice that it always seems to come in one of those areas, right? It's health in my body or your body. It's a major project or something that you're really passionate about that just isn't, it's starting to collapse or fall apart, or a relationship that becomes strained, or maybe it's already strained and ended and you're working through some of that grief. So some of that process of kind of chaos and order, of effort and surrender might resonate with you a little bit. And here's what I've learned, and here's, I guess, the good news, and part of what drives my passion for sharing this with all of you is I've learned over time for myself, and then the people that I've worked with, like Debbie, who the quote that I opened with, it's possible that you can start to notice when you're getting pulled away from your center and pulled away from your purpose and getting distracted. And it always shows up somewhere in the body. It can show up in tension. I hold it here in my shoulders, especially if I'm working at the computer for a long time. I also feel it in my gut, like I'm kind of bracing. I've noticed that I sometimes I'm like bracing, like it's almost like I'm expecting something bad to happen. I'm tense. It can also show up in exhaustion, burnout, a sense of feeling disconnected, almost like a brain fog of like just kind of going through the motions, but disconnected from real intimacy, from real passion, from real purpose. So guess what? That, even though all that stuff that I just described is kind of negative, like it's not things that we want to experience. I doubt any of you want to experience it. But at the same time, the kind of cool thing about this is that that's how incredibly intelligently God has created our human bodies. Your body will always give you clues when it's time to pause, when it's time to pull back, when it's time to recenter, when it's time to get reconnected with your purpose, when it's time to center back into your connection to God, to a higher power, to that infinite intelligence of the universe. It's part of the divine wisdom of the whole universe. There's that order, right, that we see in creation, that we actually have access to in and through our bodies. So paradoxically, when you start to feel like chaos or things are out of control, that is actually perhaps part of a bigger order designed to get your attention, designed by God, by an intelligence that's bigger than you, a wisdom, a divine wisdom, to say, hey, let's pause. It's a protective measure to come back and listen to your body. And again, it's part of the human condition. It's not our bodies that will like keep us driving, right? It's more your brain or your will or your attachment to needing the outcomes to happen in a certain way that keep you pushing and pushing and pushing until you find yourself, curled up in the corner of your office, exhausted and totally burned out and thinking, I can't do another email. I'm going to lose my mind. Now, here is where this process of centering for wisdom is brilliantly designed to work with these natural rhythms between chaos and order, between effort and surrender, and these clues that are built into the nature and the grain of the universe that are also built into your body's innate wisdom. So centering for wisdom works with, the patterns in our body and in our creation to help us find a better way to stay in that centered, creative, innovative space. So rather than waiting until you hit a wall and collapse or get burned out or have a major health crisis or a project fall apart or a relationship strained or ending, in centering for wisdom, you learn a simple practice that you build a habit around that practice into your life so that you always are coming back to your center in God, to something bigger than yourself at regular intervals before you push too hard and start getting into that cycle of burnout and overwhelm. Now, when you're first starting out with this process of centering for wisdom, for those of you who are watching this, if this is resonating with you, you've probably got months, maybe even years, maybe even lifetimes, or at least a lifetime of exhaustion and tension that is built up in your body and that is being carried and reflected in your soul as well. So in the beginning, when you start this process of centering, it's about stopping that cycle and giving your body the time and the space to slow down and to heal, to slowly start coming back to center, slowly rediscovering your inherent worth and value that's always been there, but we lose touch with it if we get attached to thinking our value is mirrored in the outcomes, right? Or getting slowly back in touch with your innate sense of purpose for which God put you on this earth to have this human experience and to share out of your own unique skills and experiences, even your struggles and your suffering and maybe what you see as failures, all can be integrated into this bigger purpose. Then, so you kind of start with that deeper healing process, and that can take a while as you get started, a couple months maybe or a month or so. then while you're doing all of that deep healing and reconnecting, in that process, not only are you kind of coming back to center, but you're also rewiring and retraining your body and your mind and your brain. Even the physical neural pathways in your brain are starting to shift. So that as you start to move beyond that initial phase of healing, now you've got the habit and the practice developed, and you're set up to stay centered and aligned with divine wisdom for the rest of your life. That's really what we're talking about here. It's like you have a home base, and that's your daily practice of centering to come back to when you start to get pulled away from your center. You can feel your body start to move towards burnout and exhaustion. And the reality is this will happen because you're human. We're all human. It's just what happens. If we start going back into life without having these little reminders built into our day to come back to center in this simple practice that anybody can learn, it's just human nature. I mean, I teach this and I've been practicing it for over almost 2.5 decades. And I still have to have these reminders. I still have to have my body tell me like, hey, Tom, you're pushing a little hard here. Like, let's come back. So if having that kind of a center, a ground, a spiritual practice, a guide, and an ability to access your body's connection, its innate wisdom and its connection to divine wisdom is something that you want and you're interested in cultivating and getting in touch with, and anybody can do it, even if you're thinking, I don't know, man, I'm pretty far out, pretty burned out. Like, I've worked with people who are really, have gone a long way down that path. It's always possible to come back into that healing process and get realigned. So if that's something that's interesting to you, then I want to invite you to book a free breakthrough session with me right now. I'm going to put a link in the chat box here. It's at thomasjbushlack.com/apply. If you give me 1 second, appreciate. Let me put that in there. So again, you can book that free breakthrough session. It's for some reason telling me I can't post it. So it's thomasjbushlack.com/apply. And I also put it in the description of this Facebook Live event. And what will happen is you'll get in there, you'll choose a time in the next 24 to 48 hours that works for you. And then you just answer the call at that time that you selected. And we've got this proven process. It takes about 45 to 60 minutes to help you get really clear on where you could use some of that centering, grounding energy, what dreams and purpose you want to start to connect with. We'll start to dream a little bit out of and in that spiritual practice, and you'll know exactly what the next step is to do to kind of move back towards your center. So if we get through that process and where your struggles are now and where you'd like to be is something that I'm 100,000% confident that I can help you with, then we'll discuss that with you. And if not, you will still get massive value and clarity from the call. So again, want to invite you to book that call. I'm going to try to post it again. I don't know why it wouldn't do it. Apologies on that. But again, it is in there. It's thomasjbushlack.com/apply. And again, would love to chat with you and have this free no pressure breakthrough session with you. And I'll leave you again with that quote from Debbie that inspired this whole idea of this back and forth between chaos and order, between effort and surrender. So again, here's what Debbie had to say. She said, at a time when I was most overwhelmed with life, I happened upon Tom, and he introduced me to the Centering for Wisdom program. My program with Tom helped me to slow down, focus, and center my thoughts on a place of openness. Centering for Wisdom is the perfect guide for someone who is looking to accept or manage the chaos of life. I left my program with a clearer picture of what I can do to improve my ability to handle and process stress, increase my patience for others and for myself, and achieve a better and more efficient work environment. Pretty cool stuff. Again, kind of got all tingly, a little bit teary-eyed when Debbie first submitted that and said, yeah, go ahead and use it, on your Facebook Lives or your website. So thanks to Debbie. If you happen to see this, it was my pleasure working with you. And again, if any of this resonates with any of you watching, just invite you to click on that link or go to thomasjbushlack.com/apply. Book your free breakthrough session, and I will look forward to talking with you soon and seeing how we can get you moving out of that process of the chaos and back towards that center and surrendering in. All right. Thanks for listening, everybody. Have a great rest of your day. Take care.